I really wanted to understand this concept of creating consumer demand. How do you identify it and how do you create it? It'll be great if you give a specific example of Titan when you were heading it and how you made it the market leader. What is that mantra? I would also like others to talk about how do we really go out and create that consumer demand. So let's start with Harish.
So, Piyush, I think reflecting back on Titan and creating outcomes and consumer demand, the first thing I'd say is, as a business or a brand, I think we have to be very clearly aligned to some of the big consumer trends which are sweeping people. There are decades in which there are certain trends which are very, very large. It's very difficult for a business to swim against the tide, but I think every category and every brand can, at any point in time, hitch itself onto a big trend. And Titan did that over the first 3 decades and continues to do that today, which is that accessorization has been a big trend. And that trend came into India perhaps in the 1970s or 1980s. Yep. And Titan, across all its categories, whether it's watches or jewelry or eyewear, has consistently, I think, swam with that trend. But I think it is important for a brand to have its own lens with which to view and leverage this large trend.
I think a huge difference. One was their fast cycle innovation and having the right products, and they were a very late number 2. Please remember that. Okay. But in 15 years, I believe they changed the experience of watch buying, and retail was a very important element. They changed the retail experience. All of us were used to going and standing behind glass counters and looking at watches, but I think Titan fundamentally changed the retail experience, and that is what I would give them a lot of credit for.
Okay. Maybe I can come to Puneet. Puneet, you've launched a couple of new channels in the last 1 year or so, NTV, Zindagi, in an already very crowded GEC market. And the other thing that's a little surprising for us is that it's not linked to the mother brand. So what was the strategy behind that? And then I'd like to ask others, is it good to link to the mother brand or not good to link to the mother brand? What's the strategy here?
Yeah, actually, when we were embarking on looking at, it actually stemmed from digitization. And we realized that in an environment where today, in the analog world, the consumer is used to receiving any from 50 channels to 80 channels in their homes, which will go to 200 to 500 channels, which means fragmentation was going to happen of television viewership. Newer audience sets will get created who will have opportunity to consume content not just on the traditional TV screen, but on the alternate TV screen itself. And lastly, the consumer itself told us that Z, very nice channel, but it's my mother and father's channel. It's not meant for me.
Interesting.
So the new generation families also were not willing to experiment with that kind of content. And our loyalists were not letting us experiment for the new age viewer. That's when we took the decision to go away from the mother brand and create for that category, which has no linkages to Z, and therefore allows us to experiment a lot more, do a lot more edgy content which we can't do on the mother brand, and helps us expand the market.
Any counterpoints to not linking to the mother brand?
I think I'll continue on with that theme, and I'll comment on 2 parts. One was the first question that you asked about consumer demand, and then also talk about our approach to building a house of brands. I think for us, we really view information equals innovation. How many people in the audience or on this side used Facebook, let's say, more than 5 years ago? More than 5 years, yeah? Okay, so if you remember, the Facebook experience of that time was very, very different from the Facebook experience that we see today. And when we started, we had a very static photo image, and we thought that people would change it on their birthdays, on special occasions. But we found that people were actually changing it several times a day. So it was very clear to us that people wanted to express with photographs what they were doing through the course of the day, And it was that user interaction that led us to very quickly launching our Photos product, which then very quickly became the largest photo sharing site on the web. So we really believe in that philosophy of innovation coming from information, and it's something that we think about all the time when it comes to consumer demand.
Very good. John, any comments on creating this consumer demand, and how do you look forward into the future and where this is going to come from?
Yeah, I just think that it kind of goes back to some things we've been talking about today. It's knowing the consumer groups and what they need. And I think the media example is a good example. To create, your audience needed some different programming. They needed a different proposition, a different feel in order for you to build that business. And that's the most important thing, to understand the needs and the needs of the specific group of people and to target those needs. And I think that's the game we're all playing.